Hello everyone, back tuning in to today's video. We're doing Solar Sunday today for only the second time in 2016. We don't do many Solar Sundays, so when we open GazWeatherVids to a Solar Sunday, it's a bit of an event here at the website. We're going to have a look at the latest in terms of sunspot activity. Some quite interesting developments during the month of June. We're seeing quite a big reduction in sunspot numbers, so we'll see what the sun is doing in a second. The last Solar Sunday was back in March, and at that point it was beginning to show a bit of a decline, but nothing compared to what's happened in recent days and weeks. So I'm going to talk you through everything in a second. The reason we don't do many Solar Sunday updates, we just do 2 or 3, is that when we get to the winter updates, they begin in September and they carry us through to the winter forecast, which we always release at the start of December. When we get to these winter updates, solar activity always plays a big part in these updates, if you see what I mean. So it's not like we ignore solar activity through most of the year. Actually, it plays quite a big role in the winter updates, but because solar activity gets encompassed within the winter updates, it means we don't do many Solar Sundays. This could well be the second and last Solar Sunday of the year. We may be able to squeeze one more in next month, but then, of course, from September onwards, the winter updates carry us through. But before I get on with all of that, I just want to say about the charity event at GazWeatherVids. So we are raising money for Warwickshire and Northamptonshire Air Ambulance. It's a fantastic charity, and it means a great deal to myself. There's a personal story behind it, but I won't go into in this video. But it means a great deal to me and my family, and we've been running this charity appeal at GazWeatherVids through JustGiving.com since Monday, and we've raised an astonishing amount, £440 in less than a week, and a huge thank you to all of you that have donated to our charity appeal for Warwickshire and Northamptonshire Air Ambulance. If you want to donate some money, then all you have to do, there's 2 ways of doing this. You can do it through Just Giving, where it's completely secure. You just click the link. I'm going to leave a link in the description box at YouTube, and there'll also be links at GazWeatherVids. Click through those links, go to Just Giving, and then see where this yellow button here says donate. That's what you have to do. Click that, put in your donation, and away you go. Very, very simple, extremely secure, and your money will go straight through to the charity. No messing about with that one. You can also text your donation. I'll show you how to do that here. So all you have to do is put the code in, which is GWVS77, with the amount you would like to donate. This is set at £1. It could be more, of course, but £1 is plenty. If that's all you can afford, then just donate £1 and text that to 770. And by doing that, you are going to be helping to pay for this wonderful charity. The Air Ambulance relies solely on charitable donations. They don't receive any money from National Health Service or from the government or through taxation and whatnot. They rely completely on charitable donations, be it for the helicopter itself, right way down to smallest plasters and pressure wound pads. Everything has to be paid for via charity donations. So please, if you enjoy what we do at GazWeatherVids, we are a completely free website. We don't charge you in terms of subscriptions or pay-per-view, anything like that. We earn our revenue from the ads that I know you engage with. But I just ask if you enjoy what we do at GazWeatherVids, if you enjoy, say, this update, so a Sunday update, or if you enjoy the winter updates, or any of the long-range forecasts, or even the shorter-range stuff, weekend forecast, 5-day forecast, whatever you enjoy. That's if it's a written post, Terry Scully, of course. If you enjoy any of that, then I just ask that you make a donation to our appeal and raise a little bit of money for the Warwickshire and Northamptonshire Air Ambulance. And a huge thank you to everybody for doing that. Right, let's get on with Solar Sunday, and we're going to start off with the solar disc on our side of the disc today, because I think it's best we start at this point. And this is from website solarham.net. Now, I've got some sunspots here on this far left-hand limb of the solar disc, as you're looking at and it also won over here. So solar activity has picked up a little bit over the past couple of days. You wouldn't say it's necessarily all that active, to be honest, but it has picked up somewhat. But if you have a look and see what's happened in the past month or two since we did the last update in March, I'm going to start with this chart, which is the Cycle 24 sunspot number from NASA. The reason I'm starting with this is that this hasn't updated since January, this chart, and we've just updated it to take into account the dramatic events that took place at the start of June and the start of summer. So you can see what's happened. We've had via this white trend line quite a dramatic plunge in activity taking place in the course of June. So this is telling us where solar maximum was. This is telling us where we are right now. Big plunge there in solar activity, and actually we are running under trend. The white line, thick white line here, is the trend line, and you can see that by this point you wouldn't expect us to be at this point until around 2018, something like that. So we, or at least in June, we was running well under trend in terms of sunspot activity. You see this again on this chart. This is from our lovely friend James Ackrill. James supplies us with all of these solar charts. Big thank you to James. I know you'll be watching this update, James. Huge thank you to you for sending this one through, and all of the other charts that we are going to use. So again, this is very similar to what I was just looking at, really, from NASA. We can see in terms of the orange ticks and peaks and troughs, how the solar cycle number 24 has been moving up to solar maximum and then coming down in towards solar minimum. The thick red line here, the burgundy line, is the trend line. So you can see what's happened. Big plunge in activity again taking place during the course of June. So this is where it was in terms of the sunspot numbers in May. This is where we was in June. You can see quite a big drop in activity taking place there during the course of June. Of course, it's a very slow increase into this solar cycle. We started over here in 2008, that's the beginning of solar cycle 24. Gradually we moved upwards and we reached our solar maximum very late with this solar cycle. We reached it in the start of 2014, since which you can see from the trend line we've clearly been going on a downwards trend in towards solar minimum, albeit not a linear process. There's been peaks and troughs along the way, but the trend has been very much downwards. But what's happened in June, or what happened in June, is that a very dramatic plunge in activity took place. It took us back to this sort of level, a level of activity that we've not been in since 2010, when we was beginning to move out of the solar minimum and starting to creep up, albeit in a very slow process. If you have a look at this chart, this is showing us cycles 23 and 24 together. So solar cycle 23 was the cycle that ran from 1996 through to 2008, with the peak occurring, solar maximum occurring around the year 2000, just here. And you see how this solar cycle ramped up to solar maximum very quickly. It only happened, it only took 2 or 3 years really to go from minimum through to maximum in 2000. Very quick ramp up, and then a really slow and gradual sort of drop into solar minimum, albeit when we got solar minimum it was a very prolonged one. Now compare that with the current solar cycle number 24. For a start, look how slow it was to come out of the solar minimum. It took a long time to come out of the solar minimum. It took us from 2008 to around 2011 before we even started to properly move up. In that time, within that time frame in solar cycle 23, we was up here somewhere. So it's a really slow move out of the solar minimum of cycle 23 and inside of 24. Eventually we did increase activity. We got this solar maximum. It occurred late, of course, as we know, in early 2014. But look how much weaker the solar maximum was in this solar cycle compared to number 23. Much weaker solar maximum. And then as we come out of solar maximum and started trending down into solar minimum, look how quickly we're moving down into solar minimum compared to what happened with solar cycle 23, when it was a much slower and gradual drop down into solar minimum. This one is happening much quicker. It's partly, I suppose, because solar maximum occurred later with this solar cycle. It occurs just here at start of 2014. Nevertheless, I think we can clearly see we are dropping down into solar minimum in a much more quicker fashion than we did in the more active cycle number 23. So it was a much slower increase into solar cycle 24. It was a very weak maximum, and then it's been a much quicker decline back towards solar minimum, and that is of course where we are right now on this chart. We're just here, which as I say, last time we was at this sort of level of sunspot activity was in 2010, just here, and we took us to around here before we got to this level of sunspot activity in solar cycle 23. As we declined in solar minimum, it wasn't until around 2006 that we got to this sort of level of activity that we've had in June. So dramatically different, these two solar cycles, of course. This is solar flux. Now solar flux is kind of like the noise that comes out of the sun. It's almost like the sun's energy bombarding us. And again, we are seeing a drop in solar flux, not as dramatic as in sunspot numbers, but nevertheless we see the peak of solar flux just here for cycle 24, and then you can see from the trend we have been trending downwards with solar flux, and that's where we currently are. So no collapse in solar flux, unlike what we've had in terms of those sunspot numbers. We haven't had a collapse in solar flux, but nevertheless we are trending downwards, as you would expect us to do so, in terms of moving towards solar minimum. You can see again how solar flux with solar cycle 23 peaks up here, then we get the gradual decline in solar flux down to solar minimum, which occurs in this zone just here. You notice a very gradual increase in solar flux along with those sunspot numbers, a really slow movement in towards cycle 24, and then the peak occurs just here, and now we're dropping down, albeit we haven't yet had a collapse in solar flux unlike we did with those sunspot numbers. Now, one very interesting fact that we've been looking at over the past few updates of Solar Sunday, and also, of course, with winter updates, is the connection between two solar cycles, the cycle that we are currently in, number 24, and a really old solar cycle, number 12, that occurred in the between the years 1877 through to 1890. There has been a connection. It's played a big part in the winter updates over the past couple of years, albeit things went rather awry for the winter updates that we did last year. We seem to deviate. I'm not going to go into it now because it's very complicated. I haven't got a chance to explain it, but I've got to say, if you're interested in the winter updates, I'm sure you all are, the connection between solar cycles 12 and 24 will play a big part again in these winter updates, because the plot with this particular year is going to be whether we can bring the connection back together. You may remember that last year we sort of pulled the connection apart in terms of the winters of solar cycle 12 and solar cycles 24. There may have been other reasons why we did that, and this year we'll be able to see whether we bring them back together again. So that's going to be all explained in the winter updates. We won't go into that right now. But in terms of the sunspot numbers, you can see we've been trending quite closely with these two solar cycles. So the green lines here is solar cycle 12, the orange and red lines solar cycles 24. Again, it's all supplied by James Ackle. Huge thank you to James for giving us these charts. So you can see what happened and how we've been trending very similar. We start off with the solar minimum of both of these solar cycles here, or the start of these solar cycles. You see how the green line took a long time to move upwards. It's gradual movement in towards the solar maximum. It took even longer with solar cycle 24. As we know, it's a very delayed start to this solar cycle that we are currently in. Did eventually move up towards solar maximum. And you see how the solar maximum of these two cycles occurs very, very similarly. There's a late maximum with both of these solar cycles, and then you can see how we've been trending downwards in a very, very similar fashion as we move out of solar maximum, start to trend down in towards solar minimum. Now, throughout all of this, what is apparent is that the current solar cycle, number 24, is slightly weaker than solar cycle 12. So the movement into the cycle occurs more slowly, and it's a weaker sort of movement into the cycle for 24 compared to number 12. The maximum, very similar, but I think overall we do trend just a little bit weaker in terms of the solar maximum for solar cycle 24 compared to solar cycle 12. And then as we drop back in towards solar minimum, you can see that we are dropping down quicker, and we have less activity, if you like, with this red line for cycle 24 compared to what happened with solar cycle 12. It was took a longer time to drop down into solar minimum for solar cycle 12, and it was a slightly stronger, or there were slightly more sunspots, if you like, during solar cycle 12 at this point in the cycle compared to the cycle that we are currently in. So throughout all this, although cycles 12 and 24 have been trending quite closely, I think solar cycle number 24, the current solar cycle, is actually a little bit weaker. Now, these are all of the solar cycles right way back to number 1 that we are looking at on this chart. It looks like a lot of spaghetti, but this is cycle number 1 up here. The red sort of spaghetti is the one we are currently in, number 24. And this really does put it into perspective of how much weaker this solar cycle has been compared to the vast, vast majority of the solar cycles. And these go right way back into the 1700s. So most of the solar cycles are in this sort of zone just here. Most of the solar maximums, I should say, in this sort of zone here. Whereas you can see that for cycle number 24, the current cycle, the maximum occurs just here. Much, much weaker cycle. And there are only a few cycles that are on a par with this, actually. You have to come down to this bottom part of the spaghetti. You see there's only a few of them, only a handful, really, of solar cycles that are on a par, or in a couple of cases weaker than solar cycle number 24. The vast, vast majority of solar cycles tend to be significantly stronger with more sunspots compared to the cycle that we are currently experiencing. So what are the years that are very weak? Well, James has isolated these out. So again, the red line here on this chart is number 24, solar cycle 24. That's indicated over here. And there's only a few more cycles that go with it. There's solar cycles 5, solar cycle 6, solar cycle 12, of course, we've been talking about quite a lot over the past few years, number 14 and number 16. So you can see that the two weakest, quite clearly in terms of the maximums, solar maximums, were number 5 and number 6, just here indicated by the yellow and the orange coloured lines. Those two cycles were back in the Dalton minimum, and that's just as we're coming out of the Little Ice Age. It's a period of very severe winds. I'll talk about that in a moment. The red line, of course, is 24, and that's up there with the other years, which is solar cycle 12, 14, 16 as well. So we have been above cycles number 5 and number 6, but we've been on a par with cycles number 12, 14 and 16. Overall, I think generally have been a little bit weaker, certainly, than number 16, which is just here, and again, number 12, which is just here, have generally been trending a little bit under those two solar cycles, albeit we've been close. Well, this is where we are right now, and you can see we are now close to solar cycles 5 and 6, very interestingly, as we're moving out of solar maximum, starting to move down in towards solar minimum. It looks like we're beginning to leave behind number 12 and number 14 a little bit, and we're closer now to solar cycles number 5, number 6 and number 16. And those solar cycles, the years of those solar cycles were, in terms of number 5, 1798 to 1810, number 6, 1810 to 1823, and solar cycle 16 occurred from 1923 to 1933. So I'm just going to have a look at the centering temperatures of those three solar cycles. So we'll start off with number 5, and that one occurs from 1798 to 1810. On this CET chart from Hadley, that is this year just here at the start, and this year at the finish. And what's very apparent, this is solar cycle number 5, what's very apparent is look how cold the winters were during this solar cycle. Nearly all the Januaries come out cold, 3.6. Not all that cold, but not that cold by their standards, by our standards, that's quite a cold January. 1.7, 2.8, 4.6, 1.6, 1.8, 5.8, that's a milder one, and then cold again, 2.1, 4.2, 2.8, 2.6, 2.0, 2.2. The February is also generally trending to be quite cold during this particular solar cycle. So, for example, 2.8, 2.2 there, 2.8 just there. And the December's also tending to be quite cold, 1.5, 1.3, 1.5, 2.1, 1.9, 2.2, and so on for solar cycle number 5. If you have a look at solar cycle number 6, which remember is 1810 to 1823, so that takes us from this year just here down to this year just here. Again, you see a lot of cold winters in with this. In fact, it's even colder with the winters during solar cycle 6 compared to solar cycle number 5. So maybe there's a bit of a time lag at play actually going on. It's hard to say, but for example, we've got 1814, which has a severely cold January, minus 2.9, phenomenally cold. And then again, 1820 January comes out at 0.3, and 1823, the end of solar cycle 6, comes out with a negative CET of minus 0.1. And in terms of the Februaries, again, a lot of cold months mixed in, which I won't go through, and the Decembers also have a lot of cold months mixed in with this cycle number 6 as well. So quite clearly, these two solar cycles, and we're close to them now, cycles number 5 and number 6, contain a lot of severe winters. I say this is back in the Dalton minimum, where we're moving out of the little ice age, but hadn't yet sort of completely come out of it. So there is an effect. I don't think we expect these sort of CET numbers anytime soon, minus 2.9, famous last words, but I don't think we can expect that sort of depth of severe cold, because the little ice age was undoubtedly still having an effect on the period of the Dalton minimum. But nevertheless, you can see how cycles 5 and cycle 6 coincide with several really cold winters. Now, the other solar cycle that we're very close to at the moment is number 16, and that runs from 1923 to 1933. I'm just going to throw this in as a bit of a caveat, because as ever with the weather, there are always exceptions, always deviations, and although this was a very weak solar cycle from 1923 to 1933, cycle 16, generally the winters are very mild. So this is 1923 just here, the start of solar cycle number 16. This is 1933 just here, the end of it. And nothing really remarkable takes place in terms of these winter CETs. Look at this. Generally, we go down, and most of the Januaries are mild, 5.6, 4.7, 5.3, 4.6, 4.6, 5.2. We did get a cold one in 1929, 1.3. It's the only one, really. 5.6. A bit of a cold one there for 1931, 3.2. And then very mild, 1932. Bit colder again, 2.2. For 1933 itself. Similar story from the Februaries. They're generally quite mild. Nothing really to write home about, except 1929 again, which is a much colder winter in the middle of this solar cycle. And interestingly, this won't be all that far away from the solar maximum of cycle number 16 either. I think that occurred a couple of years earlier, but it won't be that far away from solar maximum. But nevertheless, we do get this really cold winter in 1929. And it's the only one really that occurs through the 1920s. So we get that cold winter, but overall pretty unremarkable with the CETs from the 1920s into 1930s. And it's same story over here for December, 3.8, 6.8, 2.8. Bit colder, I suppose, 4.2, but nothing generally all that remarkable. We've got 2.1 there for 1927. 1927, that encompasses a really snowy Christmas, of course. But the overall message I'm trying to get across here is that we are close to those three solar cycles, number 5, number 6, and number 16. We seem to be deviating a little bit from number 20, from number 12, the one we have been running close to. We seem to be pulling away from that in terms of the sunspot numbers a little bit. We're closer to 5, 6, and 16. 5 and 6 produce lots and lots of severely cold weather. Number 16, it isn't the case. Generally, we get quite a lot of mild weather, just with that one really cold winter that occurs in 1928, 1929. Now, there's probably various reasons for that, and I suppose one of the biggest reasons would be that although solar cycle 16 was weak in itself, it was encompassed in a period of rising solar activity. So it was a weaker cycle in its own terms, but generally, the 20th century had a big number of very active solar cycles. So that's probably at play. Whereas in the Dalton minimum years of 5 and 6, generally the solar cycles are quite weak as well. The other thing you have to factor in is just the fact that the oceans were probably set up for milder weather in the 1920s and 1930s. I think in the 1920s, particularly, we had a cold Atlantic and a warm Pacific, which generally is close to what happened in the 1990s. I'm sure you remember what happened in the 1990s. Generally quite mild winters occurred. But we have to keep it at the back of our mind that we are close to solar cycles 5 and solar cycles 6. They did, these solar cycles encompass a lot of severely cold winters. And, of course, this says nothing what's going to happen when we get to cycle number 25. That's the one that we're all waiting for. And I've been hoping, expecting that we would start to get some forecasts through for the next solar cycle in terms of the sunspot numbers. Solar cycle 25. I did a Google search just before I started this video, and unfortunately, no, we haven't yet had any predictions for cycle 25, or certainly no up-to-date predictions. I think we'll be getting them very soon. We should be getting them from NASA and other organisations very, very soon. So, just a case of watch this space on that one. But cycle 25 is the one that we're all waiting for, because in theory, if we continue to be similar to 5 and 6, cycle number 25 will be even weaker in terms of the sunspot numbers compared to cycle number 24, and it could hold even greater potential for colder weather. The upshot of it all, in summary, is that we are moving into solar minimum now. We are doing so at a quicker rate compared to most solar cycles. It's happening at a quicker rate. We're seeing a decline in activity from what has already been a very weak solar maximum. It was a very slow rise into this solar cycle. We are now coming out of the solar maximum, going into the solar minimum at a quicker rate than would normally be expected. The sun is still acting quite unusually and abnormally, certainly by 20th century standards. And we are closer now to solar cycles number 5, 6, and 16 than we were a couple of years ago. We were closer to solar cycles number 12. Right, that's it. I hope you enjoy Solar Sunday. How long have I been talking for? Been going on for just under half an hour, so not too bad. It's about on a par with most of the Solar Sundays. Hope you found Solar Sunday interesting and informative. I'll be putting this video onto the Solar Updates page later on today. There'll be a written summary with that. I'll be able to watch all of the video in one go. And that's it. That could well be the last, only the second and last Solar Sunday of the year. I'm not sure, but in September, all of this stuff, I find it fascinating. All of this stuff, we'll talk about it much, much more in the winter updates from September. So you have to come back for that and see how all of this could develop in terms of the winter of 2016-2017. Right, I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.